She left and you stood there torn between rage and reflection. But now she's back. And the question isn't, will she stay? It's, what kind of man will meet her at the door? See, when a woman walks away, she doesn't just test your patience, she tests your foundation. But when she returns, it's not love she's checking, it's power. She's not coming back to pick up where things left off. She's coming back to see if the version of you she left behind still exists. But here's the twist. If he does, you lose. You must become a man reborn, not because you want revenge, but because you want clarity. You don't greet her with a celebration. You greet her with calm, the calm of a man who doesn't flinch at her absence, but doesn't dance at her return. You hold eye contact. You don't apologize for your silence. You don't explain your peace. Because the man who had to heal in her absence doesn't owe her an entry fee. He doesn't open his door with desperation. He opens it with discernment. You sit down and you let her talk, but you don't hang on to every word. You don't fill the room with flattery. You let silence make her feel something, because silence is pressure. And pressure shows what's real. She'll test you, not with arguments, not yet, but with softness, familiarity, subtle touches. And in those moments, your mind will race, but your body must stay still. Because women remember tension, not begging, not monologues, not late night texts or promises, but tension. And tension only lives when you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, when you stop needing her presence to validate your worth. You sit in your chair like a man who built something in her absence, not just muscles or money, but stillness. You let her see your upgrades, but you don't parade them. You don't showcase progress like a highlight reel. You let it live in your posture. Every move slow, every word measured, every glance deliberate. Why? Because fast men look weak, and she's testing your pace. Women don't trust the man who sprints to prove he's healed. They trust the one who walks slowly because he has nowhere to be except in control. She might lean in. She might remind you of memories, but you don't fall into nostalgia because nostalgia is a drug, and drugs ruin clarity. You respond, not react. You guide, not chase. You observe, not obsess. You don't ask, why did you leave? You don't demand closure because you already closed the door the moment she walked out. This question mark, this is a new chapter. But only if you decide to turn the page. Her return isn't the reward, your peace is. You don't need a plan, you need posture, because a man with posture makes her question her exit. And when she wonders if you even missed her, that's when the power shifts. You didn't wait, you evolved. You didn't cry for her attention. You built your silence into structure, your pain into standards, your confusion into clarity. And now she sees a man she barely recognizes, calm, collected, and completely unfazed. She left thinking she was unforgettable, but now she questions if she was ever essential. That's the shift, that's the frame, and that's how you begin again, on your terms. She's not the same either. But don't assume change means alignment. Sometimes women come back not because they've grown, but because the world outside didn't treat them like you did. They return looking for comfort, not commitment. And that's your test. Don't confuse her return with redemption. She's not automatically entitled to a role just because she came back. You have to evaluate, not emotionally, but logically. And logic requires distance, not physical, energetic. You don't speak in absolutes. You don't promise second chances. You let her rebuild one action at a time because women trust what they invest in. And if you give too much too soon, she won't value the second chance. She'll resent it because easy feels cheap. And men who are easy to win back are rarely seen as worth keeping. So you protect your emotional territory. You give her space to earn what she once abandoned. You meet her with warmth, but not weakness. You maintain that edge, the edge that says, I'm open, but not available for the same dynamic. Every woman returning expects comfort. She doesn't expect standards. When she sees you have both, that's when her mind begins to shift. But don't announce the standards, live them, because standards spoken feel negotiable. Standards lived feel immovable. And immovable men don't beg for love. They create the environment where love either thrives or walks out. Your conversations? Calm. Your tone? Even. You don't need emotional spikes to prove passion. You prove it through clarity. When she starts opening up, when she shares her regrets, don't interrupt her pain with reassurance. Let her sit in it. Because growth comes from discomfort, and a man who rushes to ease her discomfort will never be respected. Let her own the distance she created. Let her sit in the silence she once chose. You can forgive, but never forget your process. You forgave not because she deserved it, but because you refused to carry bitterness. You moved on emotionally. That's your power. So when she returns, your energy isn't cold, but it's contained. Because passion without boundaries leads to cycles, and you don't want another spin on the same ride. You want the truth, not tears. You want consistency, not confessions. So you give her time, you let her show up again and again. You evaluate not over days, but weeks. And while she's proving, you're watching quietly, because real power isn't loud. It's a silent conviction. You don't seek to recreate the past. You're building something new, and she either aligns with your vision or gets filtered by your standards, because the man she left is gone, and the man you are now, he doesn't flinch, he doesn't beg, he doesn't fold, he leads, even when she returns, even when emotions surge, even when the old chemistry tries to write a sequel, he leads, because that's what men do. She'll test the new you. That's her nature. She won't ask directly, she'll feel it out. Tiny comments, passive suggestions, curious glances. She'll mention her past. Drop a name, gauge your reaction. Not to get a rise out of you, but to measure your control. You don't bite, you don't bark, you just blink slowly and smile. Because the man who's calm under pressure, that's the man she can't shake. She may ask about your time apart, who you saw, what you did, where you went. Don't lie, don't flex, don't overexpose. You give her honesty, tempered with restraint, because mystery is power. She doesn't want all the details. She wants to see if you still orbit her, if your world paused, or if you kept moving. And when she senses that you lived well without her, that's when her respect deepens, not because you were reckless, but because you were unshaken. She needs to feel that you didn't need her return, you just allowed it. And that subtle difference shifts everything, because women don't stay where they're needed. They stay where they feel chosen by a man who has options but moves with discernment. So your frame must be solid, your peace untouchable. You listen without leaning in. You speak without chasing agreement. And if she pulls back, you don't chase, you pause. Because tension isn't created by pressure, it's created by space. She leans, you hold. She doubts, you observe. Your vibe says, I'm here, but I'll be just fine if this dissolves. Because your self worth no longer hinges on reconciliation. You stopped chasing a happy ending and started mastering your presence. That's the man she never saw coming. And now, she's wondering if she's even qualified for this version of you, because evolution, quiet, firm, unapologetic, is the most attractive thing she's ever felt. She used to know your buttons. Now, she's confused by your balance. The old you would have reacted, explained, tried to win her understanding. But this version, you let confusion work in your favor. Because a woman can't manipulate a man who doesn't flinch. She'll play on nostalgia, memories of what used to be, inside jokes, places you went, photos on her phone. But every time she reaches into the past, you anchor into the present. You smile, sure, but you don't get pulled in, because the man who knows his future doesn't get seduced by memories. She may try a different angle, vulnerability, apologies, admitting her mistakes, telling you how she needed time or was confused. You don't dismiss her, you hear her, but you don't get swept in. Because pain might explain behavior, but it never excuses it. You acknowledge, but you don't absorb. You forgive, but you don't forget the lessons your suffering taught you. That's the difference between a man trying to rekindle and a man testing alignment. And trust me, she feels that shift. She'll start wondering, did he stop loving me? Why isn't he trying harder? Why is he so calm? That calm, it's louder than any speech, because calm means control, and control is what most women crave, but few men can sustain. She'll check your reactions, your tone, your body language, and when you don't give her chaos, when your peace stays intact, she has to recalibrate. She realizes she's no longer the sun you orbit. You are your own center now, and that to her is magnetic. She may offer sex to reconnect, to make it right. But if you're smart, you don't take it immediately, not because you're punishing her, but because your discipline speaks louder than desire. You let the connection build without rushing to climax. Because nothing confuses a woman more than a man who wants her but doesn't need her body to prove it. Now, the power dynamic shifts completely. She's not in control of the pace. You are. She's not testing you anymore. She's hoping to be chosen. And that's when her behavior transforms, not because you forced it, but because you led it. You lead by energy, by presence, by boundaries. And those three things, they're the masculine trifecta she never knew she needed until now. You're no longer trying to get back what was lost. You're filtering what's left and you're building forward with clarity. No illusions, no old patterns, no emotional roulette. Just a man who stayed rooted while everything tried to shake him. That's what makes her stay. And more importantly, that's what makes you never lose yourself again. There will come a moment when she tries to reignite what once was. She'll bring up old laughter, old habits, old songs, but nostalgia isn't proof of growth. It's bait. And your job isn't to bite, it's to remember. The version of her that left also knew those songs. So the melody doesn't matter. The maturity does. She might try to skip steps, fast forward the connection, act like nothing happened. But something did. And pretending otherwise is disrespectful to your healing. You don't bring it up to punish. You bring it up to anchor truth. Because real men don't move on like nothing happened. They move forward with wisdom. You acknowledge the pain. You acknowledge the break. But you don't weaponize it. You use it as a filter, one that protects your future. She might apologize more, say all the right things, even mirror your standards. But words mimic strength. Only behavior proves it, and behavior takes time. You're not looking for perfect answers. You're watching for honest patterns. Does she show up consistently? Does she respect your new standards? Does she handle boundaries without protest? Because how she reacts when you say no reveals everything. Most men break right there. They fear rocking the boat, so they make peace with storms, but not you. You've seen what peace costs when it's built on people pleasing. So now you stand firm. Your presence says, "You're welcome in my life, but not above my values." That's the new you. And it must be non negotiable because if she's truly changed, she'll align. If she hasn't, she'll resist. And resistance is your cue, not to explain, but to exit, not with drama, not with noise, but with the same silence that rebuilt you. And that silence, that's what echoes loudest after you're gone. Because the man who can walk away twice without bitterness, that's the man she'll never forget. There's a power most men never touch, the power of being unattached, even when you care. See, caring doesn't mean clinging, loving doesn't mean losing your frame, and being open doesn't mean you're vulnerable to chaos. She'll feel it, that you're calm but not captivated, that you're present but not persuaded. Because now your emotions serve you, not sabotage you. That's when her testing intensifies. Not because she's cruel, but because she's confused. She's used to men folding, men forgiving too quickly, men so eager for connection they forget their standards. But not you. You show up with strength, not scarcity. You don't beg for peace, you bring it. And if she disrupts it, you exit quietly. Because now you understand every time you compromise your standard to keep her, you teach her that love is stronger than self-respect. And that is the fastest way to lose both. So you stay steady, even when she pulls back, even when she accuses you of being cold, even when she says you've changed. Because yes, you have. You're not the man who needed her return. You're the man who chose how to respond to it. She might question your love. Let her, because your love is no longer reckless. It's refined, no longer desperate. It's directed. You give slowly. You trust intentionally. You lead with clarity. And that clarity, that's what keeps you grounded when she spirals. Because women don't need a man who reacts. They crave a man who remains rooted. Rooted in truth, rooted in vision, rooted in himself. She may cry, she may confess, she may even crumble. But you don't rush to rescue. You let her feel the weight of what she walked away from, because only through discomfort can she grow, and only through growth can she meet you at your new level. You're not punishing her. You're protecting the man you became without her. And if she's worthy, she'll respect that. not with words, but with action, consistent action, aligned action, because anything less is just noise. There's a moment in every man's life where he must choose between the old flame and the new fire within. She came back, but so did the memories, the laughter, the softness. The way she once looked at you like you were her world, but memory is a trap when you confuse it with reality. She's not just who's weight of your new standard. You're no longer available for guessing games. You're no longer impressed by beauty wrapped in chaos. You're no longer giving passes to avoid being alone. You've faced alone. You've conquered it. You've turned solitude into a weapon. Now, you're no longer afraid to walk away again, because the man who's walked through heartbreak, sat in silence, rebuilt his frame from the ground up. He's dangerous, not because he's reckless, but because he's independent. She can feel it. Every time you speak slowly, every time you pause instead of react, every time you respond with stillness instead of submission. You're not chasing anymore. You're filtering. Every glance, every gesture, every word from her mouth, not to be cruel, but to protect what you've built. Because the man who knows his value doesn't trade it for nostalgia. She's looking at you now, but not the way she used to. Not like a man she's trying to impress, but like one she's trying to decode because she can't read you anymore. And that rattles her. She expected to see remnants, leftovers of the man she knew, the version who would cave at a smile, who'd melt at her tears, who'd break structure for one more kiss. But you're not that man. You don't speak in the old language. You don't respond to the old signals. You've changed your frequency. And now she's unsure. Not because she doesn't care, but because the frame has flipped. You're no longer the one waiting. You're the one watching. She doesn't lead the dance anymore. You do. And your steps are measured. Each move is intentional. Every pause says, I'm not here to play. I'm here to evaluate. Women respect what they can't easily move. She'll test that. She'll joke to see if you still fold. She'll flirt to check if you still flinch. She'll open emotional doors just to see if you'll walk through like before. But this time, you pause at the threshold. Because a man with discipline doesn't walk into every room he's invited into. You're not here to relive emotions. You're here to examine intentions. She may try nostalgia, the remember when, the stories, the laughter, the old photos. But nostalgia is an emotional trick, and you've become immune to tricks. Not cold, not bitter, just clear. Because now clarity is your compass, and clarity kills confusion. You don't raise your voice. You don't rush decisions. You don't need to convince or be convinced. You listen, then you decide. And that unnerves her, because in her absence, you didn't just survive. You built a world where her validation is optional. The scariest thing for a woman returning isn't rejection, it's indifference. And what you're showing her now isn't hate, it's not resentment. It's something far more powerful, emotional detachment. Because when a man truly detaches, he doesn't punish, he doesn't beg. He simply moves from truth. And the truth is this: you're no longer trying to make it work. You're watching to see if it should. That changes everything, the dynamic, the energy, the weight of every word she speaks. Because she can't manipulate the frame anymore. She can't rely on guilt or memories or old chemistry. Those tools are dull now. You've replaced emotion with principle, and principles don't bend for beauty. So you sit there, calm, not cold, but centered. Not calculating, but discerning, because you're not reacting to the past. You're responding to the present version of her. And more importantly, to the future man you've become. She'll sense that. She'll feel the shift. And that feeling will either inspire growth or expose her regression. Because now the game isn't about love. It's about alignment. You're no longer a man who just wants her back. You're a man who wants peace with or without her. That realization, it's the most attractive, unsettling, and humbling thing she's ever felt. And you don't need to say it. She sees it in your posture, your pace, your presence. You're not trying to prove anything. You're just standing in who you are now. Unapologetic, unmoved, unshakable. Because the man she left no longer exists. And the one who replaced him? He's not easy to access, not because he's playing games, but because he finally knows his worth. She may not say it out loud, but in her mind, she's asking, where was this version of you when I left? And the answer, he was born the moment she walked out. because evolution doesn't happen in comfort, it happens in pain. And your pain turned into power, not spite, not revenge, power. And now she's watching how you wield it, not to control her, but to govern yourself. You're not showing off your new standards. You're just living them. You're not talking about boundaries. You are the boundary. And every time she leans in, every time she pokes, flirts, or tests, you remain unmoved. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're done playing. She may try to trigger the old you. A little jealousy here, a backhanded compliment there, mentioning some guy casually to see if your eyes twitch, but you don't flinch, because the moment you stopped being reactive was the moment you became undeniable. Understand this. A woman doesn't come back because she missed the old you. She comes back because she suspects there's a new you. But the second she confirms it, she either levels up or fades out. And that's not your concern, because you're not here to convince her. You're here to lead your life, with or without her. She can orbit your world, but she is no longer your world. That's the difference between a boy who hopes and a man who chooses. You choose your path. You choose your energy. You choose what gets access. She's no longer the sun. You are. And if she wants warmth, she'd better stop bringing shadows. Let her feel the light. Let her wonder how she ever left it. Because the version of you that stands before her now, he's not easy to reach. Not because he's guarded, but because he's earned his peace. And peace doesn't negotiate. She'll keep circling, not because she's unsure of you, but because she's unsure of herself in your new frame. And that's when the real test begins. She'll offer warmth without commitment. She'll want your attention without giving direction. She'll crave reassurance without giving clarity. But you stay planted, because you've learned something most men never do. Energy without intention is a distraction, and you've outgrown distractions. You're not flattered by breadcrumbs anymore. You don't melt when she shows softness for a moment, because you know softness without substance is just strategy. She's trying to see if she still has pull, trying to gauge if her old tactics still work. And this is where most men fall apart. They confuse her curiosity with commitment. They confuse her presence with progress. But you stay still, because the man who can say no to familiarity is the man who earns real respect. She's not used to it. She's used to men unraveling at her touch. She's used to emotional tap dancing. But now she's watching you lean back, unbothered, unrushed, unwilling to lower your standards just to feel wanted. And in that stillness, she starts to feel something rare, earned attraction. Not because you chased, but because you stood firm. Not because you begged, but because you observed. She can feel that you've reprogrammed yourself, no longer reactive, no longer emotionally dependent, no longer available for confusion. You've become the man who won't repeat the same dynamic twice. You've become the man who only accepts what reflects his peace. And now, she's unsure if she can live up to that. But that's not your burden. She left. You evolved. She returned. You recalibrated. And if she wants to stay, she'll have to rise, not charm her way back in, because a woman will only respect the man who can walk away from comfort to protect his clarity. There's a moment in every man's story where he stops performing for love and starts embodying it. Not the kind you give away for approval, but the kind that starts with self-respect. That's where you are now. You've seen her come, you've seen her go. And now you're standing in the eye of the storm, not shaken, not swayed, because the old version of you chased peace through validation. The new you creates peace through presence. You don't need to explain your worth. You don't need to prove your growth. You let her feel it in the way you speak less, move slower, react never. She came back looking for the man she remembers, but what she found was a man she no longer recognized and can't manipulate, not because you're bitter, but because you're clear, because real clarity doesn't shout, it shows in standards, in silence, in how easily you let go of what doesn't align. And if she truly wants to stay this time, she'll do more than just feel bad. She'll rise to your level, to your pace, to your peace. But whether she does or doesn't, you already won, because the man who can rebuild alone will never again beg to feel whole. You are the storm now, and she knows it. If this message hit deep, it's because you're ready to lead, not follow. So subscribe for more truth men aren't being told. And share this with a brother who needs to hear, you are not who she left. You're who she can never shake.